this, if you weren't here in the previous one with Pinion Environmental. I'm not going to attempt any more jokes because I'm all out. So I'd like to introduce our speakers today. Sorry, hold on. I need a third hand. Elizabeth Dowling is the Rocky Mountain Restoration Initiative Coordinator for the National Wild Turkey Federation. She works alongside Tara Umphries at the U.S. Forest Service to focus on planning, prioritizing, and action across the RMRI landscapes. And Tara Umphries, am I saying that right, Tara? Yeah, Umphries. Okay. Is with the U.S. Forest Service with the Rocky Mountain Region's Shared Stewardship, RMRI, and Bipartisan Infrastructure Front Range?
Yep, Front Range Project.
Front Range Project Manager. I told her they need to give her a longer title.
Infrastructure reduction.
Right. She's from Seattle, Washington, currently lives in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. And Steamboat Springs is a perfect community for Tara and her chocolate Labradors. So maybe we'll hear more about that. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlene. Thanks for everyone coming out today. Afternoon. My name is Elizabeth Dowling again. I'm with the National Wild Turkey Federation. And this afternoon, we're here to talk about collaboration. We're starting that off. I'm with NWTF. She's with the U.S. Forest Service. We're here together to talk about what we're working on across Colorado. You guys have been listening to a lot of conversations today. We're going to do a little mental break, watch a 2-minute video, and then we'll dive into some finer details about RMRI.
The Rocky Mountain Restoration Initiative is a unique project, and Colorado, as a headwater state, as a hub of the West for outdoor recreation, iconic wildlife habitat, and people here investing and understanding the issues that we're facing.
To talk about conservation in the West and not talk about water is just conversation, because water in the West is really life.
Natural fire had been on that landscape. Natural fire had taken care of the ground fuels. Natural fire had thinned it to where the trees could be healthy.
The Rocky Mountain Restoration Initiative is really built on local partners bringing what resource they can, all under the Shared Stewardship Initiative that Sonny Perdue introduced in 2018 about shared stewardship, shared values, shared responsibilities, and shared investment, and showcasing what the Rocky Mountain Restoration Initiative can do when partners all face the same direction and provide a new way, a new approach to forest restoration.
All right, how about that? Sorry about that, you guys. Just wanted to make sure you were all listening and didn't fall asleep during that wonderful video. So that's just a little bit of a teaser video that we're putting together. Thankful for Jason Lahan from the San Juan National Forest and Travis Smith from the Turkey Federation and a couple of other folks. So really what we wanted to do is share that video with you. I want to share a little bit broadly, just a broad overview of RMRI and what it is. We frequently get a question, what is RMRI? What can you do for me?
how are you engaging in landscapes? Many questions of that nature. So I'll give you a little overview of what RMRI is, and then Liz will have the fun part of the presentation to talk a little bit more about the actual work that's happening on the landscapes with some of our partners, some of which we have here, and we're very thankful for. So RMRI, our mantra or slogan is a problem for all, takes all to solve. And that's really how we look at this work and approaching the work on the landscape. We're really looking for partners, large, small, local, broad, federal, state, non-government, corporations, universities. We really do believe in order to tackle the problems that we have on our landscapes and at a scale that we have differently, it's going to take all of us to engage and bring all the ideas to the table. So we're looking, if you were at the previous presentation, for all of the 6 components to make our project successful. It was really funny as I was listening to the presentation, they had some comical adaptations for partners that we often work with, and I was thinking in my head, who are our partners, what are our partners? But the one thing that they talked about is fairy dust when the stars align, and I really do think that RMRI has created an opportunity for stars to align, and we're really starting to see some momentum in this project. So I'm thankful that we have one component that the previous group mentioned really, really loudly. RMRI has encompassed all of these partners that I mentioned and stakeholders from the beginning of this process. So the table was built large and it was built early for all folks to come together around this project. So when I think about RMRI, I think some people like to liken it to an umbrella over all this work that's happening on the landscapes. But really, I've come to think of RMRI more as a stage where folks have the opportunity to independently stand on and showcase their work, as well as the collective work that we're doing together. So when we're thinking about RMRI, an umbrella is a perfectly fine analogy, but it's also a stage where we can come together and talk about our successes, our challenges, our issues that face each of us, and think about them together and collectively. I guess this little guy's over here. So what are the nuts and bolts of RMRI? And I've waxed on about it. So it's really about a collaborative effort for increasing pace and scale on the landscape. And our mission is to increase the resilience of forest, wildlife habitats, communities, recreation opportunities, water and resources for all lands in the Rocky Mountains. And I think we've done that by coalescing around 4 values: water, forest and wildlife, communities, and recreation. So it's co-convened by the National Wild Turkey Federation and the U.S. Forest Service. This plan was hatched at a meeting much like this, where the CEO of NWTF and at the time the Forest Service Chief Vicki Christensen got together and started to have some conversations about how could we leverage the strengths that each brought to the table and what could that look like, especially as the shared stewardship effort was gaining momentum. If you're not familiar with shared stewardship, we'll talk about it in a little bit, but what I can tell you is it's not a pot of money to the table, but what it does bring is almost something more valuable than money, and it's really an opportunity for people to come together and work together. So it doesn't bring a ton of money, but that is why we co-convened around and under shared stewardship. So RMRI started at that national level. It was decided that Colorado would be the pilot state for this project, in which a smaller subset of folks came together and a more localized subset of folks came together and thought about how they would stand up a pilot of shared stewardship with the 2 co-convening bodies. And so they went ahead and did that, and they selected 3 landscapes. They also identified some cross-cutting issues that we'll talk a little bit more about, and thought of how do we address those. And so ultimately the goal was that RMRI could be shared stewardship in action through this pilot project. So again, here's the 3 landscapes. And this manifested itself in a way, again, all the partners came to the table. 8 landscapes came together, 7 or 8 landscapes came together. There was meetings held with the landscapes around putting together a proposal and thinking about what that would look like. So the proposals were generated by the landscapes themselves. It wasn't that folks went out and said, oh, we'd like to have a project here, we'd like to have a project there. So they got together with a multi-faceted group of folks, put together these proposals, and presented them. So out of the 7, 3 were selected, and the Southwest Colorado project area was selected as our marquee or focus area in Southwest Colorado. Also, the Upper Arkansas project area was selected, as well as the Upper South Platte project selected. So when I say that this was a multiple group of collaborators, there was state folks in there, the DNR, Colorado State Forest Service, U.S. Forest Service, a handful of other people that came together and selected these projects. So this prioritization was undertaken by a large group of people, and collectively, this was where they landed. Let's see if I can get to the next one. One thing to note is that the proposals that were selected, I think that there were several criteria involved in selecting, but one reason why these project areas were selected is because they had some things going for them in terms of the ability to collaborate. They had collaborations in place, they had some good work going, and so, you know, it was in some ways thought that this would be an opportunity to scale up from the work that they were doing. So it would be remiss to say that RMRI, you know, plopped itself down and all this wonderful work happened. They were actually selected by RMRI because they had some really great things going in each of these landscapes in terms of work on the ground, partnerships, things of that nature. So our first focal landscape is Southwest Colorado, and they're largely working to restore 300,000 acres of a 750,000 acre footprint that you can see there. It encompasses several counties down there. And you know, I think a lot of that momentum down there, I'm sure some of you are familiar with the 416 fire. So they're really looking to make a resilient landscape, not only resilient to the fire being on the landscape and reducing the risk of severe consequences and outcomes of fires, but also helping make that landscape be more resilient post-fire. I don't know if you remember the 416 fire, but there was a lot of undesirable outcomes for the Animas River and some of those water systems there. So they're looking to reduce those significant impacts to the communities in the footprint in the Animas River. There's many, many partners involved in RMRI, but some of the key partners I think that are really interesting there, and Liz will talk more about the work that they're doing, the Columbine Resilient Forest Collaborative, Dolores Watershed, Resilient Forest Collaboration, Dolores Water Conservation District, Wildfire Adapted Partnerships, Colorado State Forest Service, NFF, San Juan National Forest. Just so you get an idea, the city of Durango, who's involved in these. And each one of these landscapes is really keying into the 4 values. They're all doing work around the 4 values in different ways. There's no prescription, so again, it's that collective interest in doing work around those values, doing work together, knowing that we can probably do more work together, and then sharing it on that RMRI stage. Our next landscape is the Upper Arkansas project. This project works with over 80 partners to restore the Arkansas River headwaters health. They're working to restore about 30 to 45,000 acres in their 900,000 acre footprint. And this is really a community-driven project. Again, when we were seeking landscapes that were actively doing work around the values, this area is doing a lot of work around the values. And RMA is really just striving to help build on that emphasis and that work that they're doing and support some of the outcomes that they're looking for. And specifically through a handful of efforts around recreation and wildfire mitigation. I think they're the first area to have a community recreation and resource planning. So really looking at the nexus of growth and wildlife in their community. And so that's pretty exciting. And then they worked with Colorado State Forest Service to get a wildfire risk reduction map. And they've got some quantifiable targets that they're out there working on both public and private. So a lot of momentum in this county, a lot of programs, a lot of really awesome stuff coming out of that landscape. And our last area is the Upper South Platte project area. This project is about 885,000 acres of watershed, and they're looking to restore about 150,000 acres, 75,000 private and 75,000 public acres. And the goals in this landscape are pretty similar, but one of their emphasis is protecting the water supply to the Denver metro community. It's about 2 million people, and to reduce critical wildfire impacts both during the fire and after the fire. And one of their interesting goals is, very often our efforts aren't designed to stop fires, but what they are designed to do is help give the firefighters an increased opportunity of success, right? To broaden out that margin of safety, broaden out that margin of success with some of our field treatments. So they're really focusing on emphasizing, I would just say, efficient and effective fire suppression, along with retaining unique and high-value recreation. As you might be familiar, the Upper South Platte area is not too far outside of Denver, and there's a lot of recreation occurring there. So this project, again, has many partners: Denver Water, CSU, Coalition for Upper South Platte, Aurora Water, and so on. So how are they getting all this great work done? Well, RMRI partners engage actions that support our values. One thing that has been really great as new funding sources have come forward, and we're trying to untangle them. I say that because I have bipartisan infrastructure law in my portfolio for some projects for the Rocky Mountain region. Really having your values in place and your organizational structure together allows you to be able to ingest that money because you know the value and you know the project, and you're not building that consensus and you're not building that project as you go. So all of our landscapes are invested in our values, and we're a part of deriving those values. And so that has been a very helpful thing of partnering and being able to absorb the opportunity or the fairy dust or whatever you'd like to call it as it comes down in a very uncertain manner. And so lastly, we identified some cross-cutting issues when the 40 leaders initially got together. We have the governance subcommittee. That's just how are we going to govern ourselves. I don't think we need any explanation. But biomass utilization, there are many parts here in Colorado that don't have merchantable timber, but they have a need to do something with biomass, and what do we do with that? And how do we use that in a meaningful way? And how do we matriculate industries, and how are we gonna move about that? So we've got a biomass utilization that works closely with industry as well as Colorado State Forest Service. Workforce capacity, I think that you could look to any one of us partners, whether it's the federal government, the NGOs. It's difficult to find folks to employ right now, to retain employees. In Colorado, we struggle with workforce housing. A lot of the work that we need to do is in communities that are very expensive to live. For instance, Steamboat. I don't know how we still live there, truly, but we do. So there are many issues just along with the next generation, workforce housing. So we're working on some of those issues. Funding, we're working on what that looks like. We've organically had some really great partner funding opportunities. Social license, this is a conversation that is ongoing, and having your communities and your collaboratives and everyone thinking that this is what we want to do, and sharing the messaging around all of the values and what does that look like. And then communications, just being able to tell our story for a number of reasons. But here's the fun part. That's a little bit about what RMRI is, and hopefully it's a little bit clearer to you, and we've dispelled or demystified some of the myths of RMRI, as some of our folks like to say. But RMRI is really a pilot demonstration of shared stewardship in action. Taking these 3 principles of doing work at scale, working across boundary, because we know that much of this work isn't coincident with a jurisdictional boundary line or an administrative boundary line, and then setting these priorities together, which many of these groups have had the opportunity to do. And they've opened these tables early and made them broad and had the ability to set those priorities. So I'm going to pass it over to Liz to talk about shared stewardship in action.
I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into each landscape, not to be repetitive, but just to talk from a different lens, maybe a little bit more geological, why the urgency, why here. And so specifically when we're looking at the southwest area, we have the rivers, the Dolores, Animas, Mancos, Florida, sorry, and Los Pinos, as well as in reservoirs, we have McPhee, Lemon, Jackson Gulch, and Valsito. Like Tara mentioned, we've had several fires in the southwest, most recently the 416 that really devastated certain landscapes with acreage and where that public and private land is. We've been working with our forest product industry, so as well, we're looking at resiliency, we're looking at sustainability, working with the local community that they can still live in an area that's fire resilient, as well as looking at the local community and the timber industry, that we can all be here, work together, and live without the fear of wildfire catastrophic risk. With our water nexus, with this being a water conference, we've talked a lot about timber, but water is a core priority of the Southwest landscape, and we want to quantify the acres and see the benefit from products and where we're starting to refine our priorities around water. Specifically, we've worked with, this landscape has completed a stakeholder assessment. We've been evaluating and prioritizing water values alongside with our RMRI values. We're working together with CWCB as well as many of our other public and private on an analysis tool, working side by side to focus our efforts regarding all land and water conditions. A little of our accomplishments. This is 2020 and 2021. We're so close to adding our 2022, but still October. So I'll add a little bit more fun details that I can kind of give hints at soon. All of these acres broken down are by value. It's important to note that these numbers lump public and non-U.S. Forest Service / BLM land acres together. The public lands include city, county, state, tribal, and federal lands. Private includes non-forest BLM lands, and those acres were over 4,000 acres impacted by this program. Okay, Upper Arkansas, we're going to go over quickly. Again, this area includes Lake and Chaffee County. It is world-class recreation. We know that this is the country's most rafted area, which is pretty insane. I didn't fully understand that when I took this job on, but yeah, Upper Ark is rafting, fishing, recreating, all of that, and as well as drinking water for so many people, and now growing. It's also 60% of Colorado's gold medal water. And quickly, I'm going to go over our South Platte, not any less important, but just short on time. Huge part about Upper South Platte, it's our WUI area, our wildland-urban interface. We approximately, this area provides water for 2 million residents. This is probably outdated. As well as 32,512 residents and structures, probably also outdated. This area has 3 million visits to our gold medal trout fisheries, mountain bike trails, state parks, as well as hunting opportunities, threatened and endangered species populations, and critical habitat. So all three super important. Telling our story. We really believe in these 3 steps to what we reach the RMRI effect. Through communication, we're building among partners, which provides a mechanism for effective decision making and scaling up all of our work. We hope through conversations to the public like here today, we help create buy-in and inspiration. Last, this leads to our next box, mobilize support. Then all of our leaders getting together, plugging in, steering their own support, resources, and funding towards RMRI lands. Hence this RMRI effect and spider webbing out. I want to provide a little glance into 2022 since I don't have specific data that I can provide. But the one thing I want to give a shout out is to our funding partners, and that's NIFWIF and DNR. Chris West just walked out, but both parties have been fundamental for us. National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, NIFWIF, created a phenomenal Colorado funding opportunity. Within their grant, their forest health criteria aligns with the priorities and strategies of RMRI, so they're plugged in. Some fun stats. As a result of this connection, the Restore grant has funded 14,000 restoration acres, both private and public. They've improved management of 400 public acres, restored 1.34 miles of riparian and in-stream habitat, and had 350 volunteers on site. To dive into DNR, through public legislation, the Colorado Strategic Wildfire Action Program, COSWAP, this was prompted by partisan support SB 21/258. With our strong connection with DNR, they granted RMRI partners to apply individually of projects in their landscape. As a result, COSWAP has granted $1 million per landscape for a total of $3 million, which is phenomenal. Just to wrap up, we had a partners meeting last week in Southwest Colorado. It was phenomenal. It's the first time we've been able to get together since COVID. We've been doing virtual meeting, and to get everybody in the room, we had a day of panel discussions and 2 days of field trips. Second day, looking at landscapes that have been treated. Third day, industry tour, looking at what we've been doing with the timber industry. I did not pay anybody to say anything nice about RMRI, and all I heard were partners complimenting partners, and that meant so much to us. They were talking how at the local level, because of this COSWAP grant, we were able to do this. Because of the Restore grant, we were able to tackle this project. We had a phenomenal project working with the BLM, and then we worked with the Forest Service, and just seeing this organic collaboration that meant so much to our team. And it also made me think that we all have to work together. At one of our field trip days, we were looking at the Animas City Mountain. Just that mountain, they want to burn it, they want to do some thinning projects, and it's a big deal. It's right in town. Half the mountain is owned by BLM, another chunk is Forest Service, another chunk is the city of Durango, and then I think there's La Plata County adjacent. So just looking at the reality of what do we want to get done, we can't do this on our own. We have to work together for the overall mission if we want to hit at an accelerated scale to make a difference. So before I go, I just want to say a strong reason Tara and I are here today is because of the relationship the U.S. Forest Service has with the National Wild Turkey Federation. Surprise to many, we've been working together for 40 years. I don't think people know that relationship, and we've been working alongside one another, and it's been great. People are coming in, so thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys joining us, and if there's any time for questions, probably not, but come talk to us afterwards.